Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with the Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
News.
Afghanistan's Taliban rulers break another promise, this time banning women from attending universities.
Earlier this year, the Taliban forced many universities to narrow the fields in which women could study. Nursing and literature were allowed, for example, but agriculture, economics, engineering were out. This after the Taliban had already said high school-aged girls could no longer attend school until they figured out a way for them to do so in a manner they deemed appropriate. Now the country's education minister says women cannot attend university or college at all until further notice. Last month, women were banned from parks in Kabul as the Taliban leader said Islamic laws weren't being properly followed. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
A judge in California denies Scott Peterson's request for a new trial.
Peterson, who was serving a life sentence, convicted in 2004 of killing his pregnant wife and their unborn son. His attorneys argued juror Rochelle Nice was biased, claiming she did not disclose on a pretrial questionnaire that when she was pregnant, she filed a restraining order against her then boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. Nice saying it was not intentional. Peterson moved off of death row in October, 2 years after California's Supreme Court overturned his death sentence. His attorney says, obviously, we are disappointed, citing new information to prove Peterson's innocence, adding we are going to continue to push forward until he is freed. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
And actress Sonia Eddy, who played Nurse Epiphany Johnson on the ABC soap General Hospital, dies.
1 minute I'm being informed that you have checked out of GH against doctor orders. Next minute you're calling me telling me that your associate is waiting for me downstairs to drive me here. Where am I anyway, and what the hell is going on?
Eddy joined the show in 2006 and quickly became a fan favorite. The ABC soap says she passed away Monday night at age 55. No word on the cause of death. I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pica's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three. Best radio stations, The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pica's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pica's Best listeners with Pica's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pica's Best. Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning shows.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning Mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Pacific Points is turning 2 years, and we're giving away 2 million points. Imagine what you could do when you win up to 2 years worth of free Shell fuel, Foodies products, or rebates on your IT&E bill. Receive entries into our monthly and grand prize drawings when you sign up for Pacific Points. Earn and redeem points at Shell, Foodies, and IT&E when you refer your friends, and more. Go to PacificPoints.com for details and see more ways to enter. Pacific Points. Do more, get more.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think all you tailgaters out there know that Second Amendment as well as I do, and you're fully familiar with the thrust of this show, which is conservative, freedom, liberty, American patriotism, the American way, conservatism, etc. So welcome aboard. We've got another exciting, elucidating, educational episode of Tall Tales ahead of us here. And those of you who aren't interested in the things I just mentioned, it's probably a good thing good that you're here now, because you probably need this show really, really more than you can understand. So we're going to start out with Zemi Akotny. First item on the card today is titled Rendrati versus Paper. And it's kind of prophetic as to what's happened to the editorials. I'm not going to spend any time on this editorial today. What it's about is telling people, hey, if you've had too much to drink, don't drive. Yeah, something you never, ever hear anymore, right? And if you are in that situation, you should call 988 or 671. That doesn't look right. 671-787. That's not going to work. 671-787-9276. 671-686-9726.
Is that Officer Terlotti's number?
Yeah. Yeah. That's Officer Champion's number, right? First number is the number for Jerry Kitchen. The second number is for Officer Champion. Yeah. So write those numbers down. And it's a serious thing. You know, people should not drive if they've had too much to drink. And if you don't know how much is too much, don't drink at all. Because the tricky thing about drinking is that the more you drink, the more you're sure that you haven't had too much. It's not a good idea to drive, to go out drinking. And I'll give you another tip. Going back to my old days when I used to drink. I haven't had a drink this century. But back when I used to drink, I never went out on New Year's Eve. Amateur night. It's the worst possible night of the year. People that don't touch a drop all year go out on New Year's and think, well, it's New Year's. You're supposed to get drunk on New Year's Eve, right? Not a good idea. Okay, so much for Zemi Akotny. Well, actually not so much, because I've got a couple of other things I want to read into the record. I've got an op-ed by Lee Weber called Asian Tigers with American Stripes. And then I've got a letter to the Daily News from Carlo Dizon. And Carlo Dizon, I'll tell you a little bit about Carlo Dizon. He was the program director for the 6th edition of Future Investment Initiative, a global conference that brought together influential heads of state, CEOs, and investors to discuss and address major challenges and opportunities facing the world. He's licensed to practice law in Guam, holds a Juris Doctor from Stanford, a Master in Comparative Politics from the London School of Economics, and a BA in Political Science from Yale University. This sounds like a really high horsepowered guy, right, Jose? You figure, man, when he puts words on paper, they're probably worth reading. Well, this is what he said today. His letter, Reimagining Self-Determination. We need to reconceive self-determination. Self-determination reaches beyond culture, as your politics, culture, or law. It's a philosophical concept operating on the level of entire civilizations related to the fundamental nature of being human. It's deeply rooted in the idea that every person has a right to choose their own path and shape their own future. In Guam, self-determination at its core is about whether one's humanity is diminished or impaired simply by being in a specific location. Therefore, this is supposed to be serious, but I had the same reaction as the real Joe Cruz. Yeah. Therefore, the issue cannot be limited to political or cultural debates. It cannot be more important to certain groups of people than others, nor can it be merely a legal issue. True, self-determination is a principle recognized in international law, including the United Nations Declaration on Granting of Independence to Colonial Countries and Peoples and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. In the U.S., one might argue it's implied in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, known as the Guarantee Clause, which states that the federal government must guarantee to every state a Republican form of government.
Wait, must give to every what?
Must guarantee to every state a Republican form of government.
Every state.
Every state. Query whether the clause legitimately constrains its application only to states and not to unincorporated territories. Stanford law. Yeah.
Who needs law?
Yeah. Well, who needs Stanford law?
Who needs Stanford
if you're stumped by that question, wow.
Well, it is in another country, California.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether the clause, the guarantee clause, constrains its application. Let me just pull out my book here and read it straight from the book, because I already know the answer. I knew the answer a long, long time ago. Article 4, Section 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a Republican form of government and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. Now, what was the word there at the end of the first clause? I think it was state. Now, when you're reading the Constitution, words mean something. If you wanted to use the word territory, you got to go to Article 4, Section 3. So I know the answer to that, and the answer is not only no, it's hell no. The United States does not guarantee to the territories a Republican form of government. Republican form of government meaning a representative government. The people elect their representatives. For the national government, it's Congress, etc. And we know from territorial history that has never been the case. But anyhow, Stanford law, I guess that's all you need to know about Stanford law, huh? Okay, then the next subtitle here is Reinvigorate. Political outcomes, cultural perspectives, or legal decisions on self-determination will always only be a part of the overall picture. To advance self-determination, we must reinvigorate the concept. We need to collectively tease out its strands and understand how it underpins every facet of our lives. Self-determination should be actively discussed and debated at all levels of education from elementary to college. More papers should be written about its society-level impacts, from urban planning to medicine to economics. It should be examined through local arts and cultural products, from literature to popular entertainment. Self-determination is not achieved through governments, political parties, or courts. It begins with a collective realization, a renaissance of sorts, asking and answering questions on what it means to be human. Answering questions on what it means to be human. How should I know? I'm not a biologist.
It's an interesting letter or column or whatever you want to call it. It's a letter. Very abstract, but started out with factual law and all this other thing on a CV.
Mm-hmm.
But then he turned into a fiction writer. So, yeah, reimagination indeed.
Yeah.
Reimaging also.
Well, I would challenge anyone who listened to what I just said to give me one paragraph of what it's about. Yeah, it's pretty abstract, Jose.
And that's the problem with these really long CVs and long resumes.
Yeah.
They turn out to be long in the tooth as well.
Exactly. Yeah, and sort of like, if you have all of this high-powered academic education, you can't just speak in regular English because people expect so much more from you, and you don't want to disappoint them, right? The sesquipedal word becomes the currency in which you transact all of your vocabulary-driven words. All right, the other one is from Weber, Lee Weber, an Asian tiger with American stripes. As much as things change, they don't. The recent post-election action by the lame duck legislature regarding burn pits and explosive disposal reminded me of a speech some 10 years ago by Rear Admiral Paul Bouchon as it related to changes in our U.S. military footprint and the needs required for our people's long-term safety. Bouchon gave one of the most forward-leaning change of command speeches I've ever heard from a commander of naval forces, Marianas, or now Joint Region Marianas, in my then 44 years in Guam. At that time, I applauded him for his uncommon public candor and his obvious concern for our island. He reminded government officials that it was time to man up, to act as leaders rather than responders, pointing out that when the property adjacent to Route 15 near Paget was suggested as a site for the new firing range, it drew protests from activists, and our selected officials scurried for cover when a few activists made some public statements. He also reminded these same officials that we, or they, were getting a rare second chance for a mulligan. A second chance for a mulligan.
Uh-oh.
I'm trying to figure that one out.
Deja vu all over again.
That's a mulligan.
Yep.
Yeah. So what's a second chance for a mulligan?
Eagle?
To do it all over, to have, well, anyhow.
Mulligan Square.
Yeah. They were getting a second chance, getting a chance for a mulligan, noting it's time for Guam leadership to tee up your mulligan and get this build-up back on track to the benefit of the island and the people of Guam. While the military efforts slowed, they continued 10 years later, and we have Marine Corps Base Camp Blas continuing to grow, albeit while the activists continue to complain about the firing range, only at a different, and in this writer's opinion, far less locally ideal location. Since many of the readers of this column did not have the opportunity to hear Admiral Bouchon's words, I wanted to share some of his key thoughts and points. They remain as important today as they were more than 10 years ago. While significantly shortened from his original speech, it will give you a taste of what he said and hopefully drive you to search out his entire speech. It's my belief that his remarks are not only accurate, but bear reading and repeating. I wonder if Pete Santos is listening, Jose. Guam has played a unique strategic role in the Pacific for over 100 years and will continue to play a strategic role for the foreseeable future. Just a glance at the gold immediately tells you that Guam is a big part of our Asia-Pacific strategy. Governor Calvo says it's best when he tells visitors that Guam is America and Asia. Guam is key to our posture in the Pacific, the linchpin of our security strategy. Strategically located, United States sovereign territory, very impressive port and airfield capabilities, and significant logistic capabilities. Guam and the United States came together as a result of the Spanish-American War. In 1898, the United States never made Guam a colony and only put enough resources into Guam to make it stable. It never stripped any resources from Guam, the most obvious sign of a colonization effort. Guam was captured and occupied by the Japanese for 2.5 years in World War II and liberated by Marines on 21 July 1944. The battle was very intense with significant casualties. Almost twice as many Marines were killed or wounded during the liberation of Guam as were lost or wounded on Guadalcanal. Interesting. I actually had a United States Senator who was passing through Anderson on the way to further points in Asia ask me if there had been a battle on Guam in World War II. A U.S. Senator. D.C. politicians need to better understand our history. After the liberation of Guam in 1944 was when the Navy came in really big and made Guam the island that the Seabees built. With many battalions of Seabees, they built the breakwater that provides shelter for our outer harbor, dredged the inner harbor from swampland, built Polaris Point and dry docked Island, the commercial port, the power system, the roads, the airport, the water system to include Fenna, and the wastewater system. It's all stuff that the Seabees built, some of which we're still using, Jose. At the end of World War II, there were 225,000 active duty military on Guam, and we controlled over 60% of the island. Other than during the Japanese occupation, the island was always under military governorship, specifically a Navy governor, when oversight of the island was shifted from the Navy to the Department of the Interior. An organic act organizing the government of Guam was passed by the Congress in 1950. All of this was as a result of the Guam legislature, which unanimously voted to send a representative to D.C. with tasking to stay there until an act was passed which bestowed U.S. citizenship to the residents of Guam and established a local elected government. I must admit, it puzzles me when I hear the current talk of self-determination, since by my reading of history, that self-determination was made 65 years ago. There is a sometime expressed opinion that the importance of Guam to the military is one-sided, driven solely by what the military wants out of it. There have been a few cases where the military needed the strategic location and capabilities of Guam and build up rapidly, only to fairly rapidly draw back down and walk away once the crisis passed. Examples include the World War II, the Vietnam War, and then late in the 1990s, as we were trying to reap the peace dividend by drawing down overseas bases and forces. Several installations on Guam were closed and the military drew down to its lowest level since World War II. Now when I look around, I don't see a community separate from a Guam community. I see that the vast majority of Navy civilian employees, whether working for the base, NAVFAC, or region are locals serving their nation as Navy civilians. There's a very large number of served careers in the military, retired and returned home to Guam, live and continue to serve in their local villages. Many active duty military are doing voluntary multiple tours in Guam, and I see a significant number of service members retire and stay in Guam. Guam is our community too. We are an Asian tiger with American stripes, as the phrase was coined so many years ago. Let's grow and growl. Yeah, good stuff. I agree 100%. And I hope Sabina was listening. Of course, I doubt that she can. Not that she could, but that she can. All right, let's take a peek at the card and see what we've got on the card for today. We start out with Rindradi versus paper. Rindradi is Rindradi Sellis, the publisher of the Daily News. Then we go on to Holly, as Holly Ruskin, versus the Organic Act. And then we've got the Admiral versus Sabina. Timely letter by Lee Weber. Rory versus the Open Government Law, and then a lot of stuff that's been there for quite a while. You remember Feds versus Jack Dorsey, FBI, freedom of speech, all that stuff, right? And, of course, we always start out with the fact that the rice is orange, not red. But Paul Zerzan will tell you that the narrative says it's red, not orange, even though the truth is it's orange. And Paul will tell you that if you have the temerity to write a letter to the Daily News and say, hey, that rice is orange, let's call it what it really is, the snapback is powerful, and you probably wind up getting canceled by the Daily News. And we use that comparison repeatedly in the show, the difference between the narrative and the truth. Okay, first item on the card, Holly Rustic's Tyranny of the Majority versus America, but let's take a short break here.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best. Check out the newest hydro and garden center to hit Guam, Crop King Hydro. We have a huge selection of plant nutrients, soils, hydroponic mediums, organic pest control pumps, plant support, tools, and so much more. Call 635-4769. 635-GROW. Open Monday through Saturday, 10 to 6 at the Dededo Satina Mall, right across from Payless and Paradise Fitness. For whatever you grow, think Crop King Hydro. Crop King Hydro.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Some interesting posts on Facebook here. Jose Ted Pago, free coffee for good cops at Jerry Kitchen. Champions aren't welcome. And then we've got Jose Ted Pago. You'll recall that I was kind of poking fun at Yale University for the word salad that Carlo Dizon put in the paper today. And this is what Jose says about, going back again to Yale University. I think that's where Hope Cristobal got her degree, from Yale University. And then let's see. And we got Jose again. Klaus Schwab. I've talked about Klaus Schwab more than once, right? Klaus Schwab last speech at the G20, he used the term reimagining the structural order of the world. Yeah, so the old saying for university types goes like this, Jose: plagiarize, plagiarize. Let no one work evade your eyes, but when you're finished, call it research. Yeah, I remember this guy, Carlo DeZone. He ran for Washington delegate once upon a time. Yeah.
Unsuccessfully.
Yeah, very unsuccessfully. Okay, we've got Holly Rustick versus the Organic Act, and this picks up on a couple of times when we've talked about Holly. Holly wrote a letter to the editor of the Daily News, telling people what the common sense approach to abortion is, and that is, if you can't afford to have a baby, or if you can't afford to raise a baby, kill it before it's born. Save yourself some money. That's basically what she said. And I've mentioned I'm working on the Holly Ruskin app as a means of solving what I refer to as Vanessa Williams' dilemma, where Vanessa said it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. Well, the Holly Ruskin app will help women sort out those choices. All right, next we've got, oh, wait a minute, that got stapled to the wrong paper here. Tear that apart. Yeah, so Tim posted this in Jungle Watch. If you don't go to Jungle Watch, you're missing a lot. junglewatch.info on the internet. Very readable. And this is what Tim said, talking about Holly's letter. Notwithstanding Holly Rustick's abortion-supporting views in her December 16 letter to the Daily News, Ms. Rustick founds her argument on a particularly common erroneous assumption. That is, that lawmakers' first duty is to represent constituents. Ms. Rustick begins by calling on Guam's lawmakers to live up to their job description, beginning with represent constituents. One wonders where Ms. Rustick found a copy of said lawmaker's job description. The only official description for lawmakers is set forth in their oath of office. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I solemnly swear in the presence of Almighty God that I will well and faithfully support the Constitution of the United States, the laws of the United States applicable to Guam and the laws of Guam, and that I will conscientiously and impartially discharge my duties as a member of the Guam legislature. It's in the Organic Act. Aside from the fact that elected lawmakers' number one job description is to faithfully support the Constitution of the United States, which now permits states and territories to make their own abortion laws, like the heartbeat bill, which Ms. Rustick opposes, there's nothing in the oath that says they are to represent constituents. And by the way, what does that mean? Bob Klitzkie commented on his show yesterday, does that mean that every time a lawmaker has to make a decision, said lawmaker runs outside, licks his finger, and sticks it in the wind to see, in essence, to see which way the political wind is blowing? Our system of government is not a majority rules or direct democracy. It's an indirect democracy. That is, a representative democracy wherein we elect officials to represent us in matters before the government. Our, quote, say-so does not have to factor into every decision before the government. Elected representatives are free to do what they think is best. Thanks to the First Amendment, though it's really facing hard times, we may mouth off any time we want. However, the only time we actually have a say is at election time. Ms. Rustick states that 74% of Guam voters believe that abortion should be legal in all or most cases. And I don't doubt that. Just look at who we re-elected for governor. And for years, the abortion reports have demonstrated that Guam's native population has led the field in murdering its own progeny, even while said native population continues to drastically and irrevocably decline. Apparently, Miss Rustick and her Adelup counterpart want to see more of this. Miss Rustick also makes the case that there were far more testimonies opposed to the Heartbeat Act than were in support. The answer to that is so. Yeah. Once again, we don't elect our lawmakers to count. We elect them to do, and do what they believe is right. And if we don't like it, we vote them out. If we had followed Miss Rustick's version of democracy, wherein majority rules, we would still have slavery, forced sterilization of individuals with disabilities, internment camps for ethnic groups we don't like, racial segregation, racial discrimination generally, sodomy criminalized, child labor, and amongst any other injustices, Al Gore as president. In fact, our founding fathers, fleeing tyranny themselves, wanted to make sure that their new nation would not succumb to a new kind of tyranny, a tyranny of the majority, and thus sought to ensure against such atrocity by establishing a representative democracy that will sometimes do what people like Ms. Rustick, former slave owners, eugenicists, Japanese haters, black people haters, etc., do not want it to do. Yeah, a nice piece by Tim.
And they appropriately are lumped together.
Yeah, they're all lumped together. Okay, next on the card, Rindrati versus paper. And this was the front page on the digital edition. I don't know where it'll come out in the hard copy tomorrow. But it goes like this. President Rindrati Limtiako's message to readers. I always thought she was the publisher, but which sounds more important, Jose, president or publisher?
President.
Yeah. First, she says, "Dear readers, I want to first thank you for being a loyal Pacific Daily News customer. Your trust in us has been very important to our business and something we value. We have not printed a paper in 10 days. We have had problem with our press and the supporting machinery. We need to make it work. We're doing everything possible to fix the issue. It's been difficult locating the necessary parts to make the repair, but we are on it and doing our best to get everything working so we can start printing a paper soon." Seems kind of logical, doesn't it? Thankfully, in this digital age, we also have a newspaper in digital format, precisely the way the paper looks in print. Only difference is you can't wrap your garbage in it or your fish in it or whatever. You can't use it to wash the windshield of your car, right? And this is our e-edition. All print subscribers also have access to our e-edition. So you can access our e-edition, and there's a link in the digital edition, two different things, e and digital. You can call up any issue for the last 30 days. The holidays are not the best time for us to have these issues. No time is, but the holidays especially. We have so many wonderful stories in our paper about good things that our community is doing through the season and the news that you've come to value from us. It would be a shame to miss it. Now, she doesn't say this, but Also, it's the prime time for newspaper advertising leading up to Christmas, right? I hope you can bear with us through this challenging period. We know that we will get through it. Thank you, Renreti Celis Limtianco, President, Pacific Daily News. So, a couple of times in my long life, Jose, when I was traveling, I pulled into a gas station and see a sign on the pump saying, "We're out of gas." It's pretty, by gosh, unusual, right? But to see a newspaper that's out, they can't print, we're out of paper.
10 days.
10 days, yeah, that is, I don't think we ever went that long post-typhoon. I remember the kind of the one thing we'd have to grab a hold of post-typhoon was you could go somewhere and buy the paper. Yeah, well, it's a technological age. We've got the internet and all kinds of digital gadgets like this thing here. Yeah, it's oh, wait a minute. Newspapers have been around since the century before last. Doesn't seem like it's high tech, does it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
The higher the tech, the less repairable it is.
Exactly. Yeah, and you find out, certainly with automobiles, that nobody knows how to fix cars anymore. They know how to swap modules. So you pull in. I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but it's a classic example. We bought a new in 2004. We bought a Chrysler PT Cruiser. I just really like the retro looks of that thing. Kind of reminded back in the day. And after the warranty had expired, but it didn't have high mileage on it, it got to the point where you couldn't, it was stick shift, of course, where you couldn't change gears with a stick shift. It just was stuck. So I took it up to Cars Plus, and they looked at it, and they said, yeah, we're going to have to replace that rod and this. And it would have cost me $400, Jose. $400. So I said, well, I don't know. Let me think about this. I towed back home. My grandson, who at the time was, 14 years old, crawled under the car, crawled out, got a Zori and a sharp knife, cut something about the size of a little smaller than a quarter with a hole in it, crawled back under the car, removed the remnants of a bushing that had fallen apart. There was a peg that stuck up, put the piece of Zori on that peg, put the eye of the arm over that bushing, and we drove it away. Cost of goods, one used Zori ready for salvage anyhow, right?
That reminds me of a Neo Chamorro word. He MacGyvered it.
He MacGyvered it, yeah. So after we did that, we drove it for a while. I went online and I found a place in Minneapolis called, of all things, Booger Bushings. They should have called themselves Bushings Are Us, and bought enough of those bushings that, a lifetime supply of those bushings for...
That was it.
Like $5, and that was it. Yeah. So,
I mean, I'm no mechanical guy either, but nowadays, if you want to find out what's wrong with your car, they plug something in, and if they can't figure it out from the computer, they have no idea.
You got to jack up the radiator cap, drive another car under it, and put the radiator cap under it. Yeah. Yeah, those things are pretty interesting, aren't they? When your trouble light, now on my Rocky, when the trouble light goes on, there's a connection that you defuse, and then you short out that connection, and the light on your dash will blink a certain number of times, and you look at the owner's manual, and that'll tell you what's wrong.
I suggest the PDN have someone check in the corner to see if they forgot to plug it in.
It happens. It does happen, yeah. Well, we kind of strayed off the subject here, but next on the card here is the Admiral versus Sabrina Paris. But let's take a short break first.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with a Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
All right, so we got about 12 minutes more before the big halftime show in Rogues Gallery. So this is the Admiral Nicholson versus Sabina Paris. Admiral concerned open detonation ban could hamper emergency ordnance response. And this ran in the Daily News today. Rear Admiral Benjamin Nicholson Tuesday said he's concerned a ban on open detonation recently passed by the legislature could hamper the military's ability to respond to unexploded ordnance that's routinely unearthed on Guam. Senator Paris' Bill 360, which would ban the open burning and open detonation of all hazardous waste, is on the desk of Governor Leon Guerrero for consideration. Paris included an exemption for World War II-era ordnance in the proposed ban on open detonation, a move she said stemmed from written testimony Nicholson provided. But the Admiral said the language of the bill passed without consulting Joint Region Marianas during the small window for public comment does not close the door on potential legal issues. Is the bill now asking the explosive ordnance disposal technicians, the folks that go out there and put their lives on the line, to remove this stuff? Is the bill asking them to determine if they found what they found is World War II era or not? How do they tell? Nicholson asked. There are munitions that were used in World War II that were also used in Vietnam. Does this restrict them from transporting and then disposing those? It's unclear to me because in that case, it's too much specificity. The potential unintended consequences of the bill were outside the area of expertise, he said, but could hamper the ability of the Department of Defense, which handles all unexploded ordnance disposal on Guam, to deal with emergencies. He said he was available to bring experts on board to work with the legislature and figure out what the best way forward is, but wasn't consulted about Bill 360 beforehand. And, you know, the bill that Sabrina introduced was hard-nosed. Just no more burning. I don't care where you found it. Then later on, she caves in and said, well, if it's something you found outside the base that's left over from World War II, it's okay. Now, is this a little bit of legislative gamesmanship? Start out with something that plays well to a certain constituency and then amend it on the floor later on after you get a lot of earned media on the introduction.
But we had 13 senators vote yes on that bill.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I would like to know their reasons why.
Exactly. The Admiral said he was not for or against the measure. What I am a proponent of is collaboratively working together to make sure the desired end state is achievable. More education about what constituted clean technology and dirty technology was required as alternative methods for disposing of hazardous waste didn't entirely remove the hazards, he said. The Navy is looking at raising these concerns with the Office of the Governor. Governor Leon Guerrero and our office will thoroughly review the bill and consider the changes made on the session floor and the public input received. Crystal Paco San Augustine, governor's spokeswoman, stated. When asked Tuesday whether there were any preliminary concerns at Adelup about the measure or plans to consult with Joint Region Marianas. So Crystal said, yeah, the governor's going to sit down and talk this over with the Admiral or somebody from Joint Region Marianas. Bill 360 passed Friday with the support of 13 senators. A veto-proof majority provided each senator maintains their support. Paris, responding to statement from Joint Region Marianas, lack of consultation last week, said the legislature had complied with all public notice requirements for the bill and amended it in light of concerns from the Admiral. The bill was introduced November 15, publicly heard November 29, passed on December 16, legislative records show. Nichols' written testimony was submitted December 1. Quote, other jurisdictions in the U.S. already exercise safer alternatives to open burn and open detonation. This bill codifies our people's expectation. Well, he must have read Holly Rustig's letter because she knows what her duty is, right? Our people's expectation, children, Manamku, and our veterans will be treated equal to our fellow Americans. You got to work that in there somewhere, right? And in the continent, in line with existing U.S. EPA guidelines, Paris said, in a statement released this weekend. About 60 letters asking for the governor to sign Bill 360 have been sent since Sunday, said Protege La Texans Monica Flores. We do recognize there are some compromises in the bill, and we're hoping that some of those can be revisited next legislature. But I think for now it's a step in the right direction. The outright ban on open burning was positive, Flores said. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency this year ordered local regulators to halt the practice due to its harmful effects. Requirements in the bill that open detonation facilities regularly check for safer alternatives to dispose of World War II ordnance also will help bring the governor of Guam in line with federal environmental mandates, Flores said. I don't think anyone wants to have these things to continue to lay around scattered across the island. Whoa! Wow, and that's quite an admission, right? And make it harder and impossible for people to reclaim their land. Oh, this is a different guy. Said attorney Ten Chow of Earth Justice, who's aiding Protege La Texan in its ongoing suit over open detonations at Taragi Beach. But the Air Force will have to prove safe alternatives don't exist, Chow said, pointing to 2019 U.S. EPA report that identified various alternative disposable methods. Now, our local EPA has already decided that this is the safest way to do it, and that's why they haven't banned it.
But our legislature knows better.
Yeah. Even if the bill passes, Protege La Texan's lawsuit over the detonations will continue with the intention of having the Air Force address the impacts of the site and whether it can be relocated. One of the important things to remember is that all these hazardous wastes were put, now here we go, the punchline. One important thing to remember is that all these hazardous wastes were put here by the military in the first place. Yeah, that's true.
A big hole in the story, but continue.
Yeah. Now, all of them were put here but she doesn't mention which military. Some were put there by the military of Japan. Remember that? Yeah, now we got to remember where Sabina's coming from. She's a card-carrying member of the International Women's Network Against Militarism. If she had a time machine, she would have gone back, and there would not have been any Marines landing on this island in 1944. She's against militarism. Yeah, so what she says is true. It was the military, but it was the military of Japan as much as the military of the United States. Remember December 8, 1941, Sabina?
Stop confusing me with facts.
Yeah, and then she goes on to say this, which is just wrong. We were carpet bombed during World War II. We were not carpet bombed. If you read, go out to Pirates Cove, have a cool one, chat up Jeff a little bit. Before you leave, go to the gift shop and buy Don Farrell's latest book, which is which really lays out exactly how the island was conquered, all of the battles, etc., what was bombed, what wasn't bombed, what was destroyed, why it was destroyed. There was no carpet bombing here. You're thinking of Vietnam, Sabina. But what the hell, what's the difference? War is war, it's all bad. You don't have to be that precise about it. We were carpet bombed during World War II. There really hasn't really been strong effort to find where all these munitions are.
Turn on the GPS.
No. All right. Well, some people are pretty predictable. She is one of them. Okay, next item on the card is Rory versus the open government law.
That's a good teaser for after the big halftime show.
Yeah, it's at halftime already, Jose? All right.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A dangerous holiday week storm. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. The storm spreading across the country may bring a life-threatening deep freeze to many areas. What may become a so-called bomb cyclone could knock out power and cripple holiday travel.
It's mainly going to be a heavy rain event for that I-95 corridor, but winter is settling in. And with this area of low pressure that's going to trek right through the Great Lakes, we do have snow that's going to be a concern. But I got to tell you, this isn't going to be the biggest headline. When we talk about the winds and these bitterly cold, even dangerous wind chills, that's what could be life-threatening. Here are the winds. Chicago, 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts expected. This is Friday evening, so December 23rd. Indianapolis, 40 to 50 mile per hour winds too. Up into Buffalo, we could be approaching 70 miles an hour.
Fox Weather's Stephen Morgan. The surge of Arctic air could make the Christmas weekend the coldest in decades. As the storm bears down and the government shutdown approaches, Congress is rushing to pass a spending bill. Senator Chuck Schumer.
I'm hopeful no senator will stand in the way of finishing our work before Friday. It's too important to the American people. As you know, there's a big storm coming in the middle of the country on Thursday and Friday, so we'd like to finish this as soon as possible. But we must finish it, of course, by Friday when the government funding expires.
Ukrainian President Zelensky reportedly plans to fly to Washington to meet with Congress Wednesday as it works to pass that massive spending bill.
A government funding bill being considered this week includes about $45 billion in Ukraine aid.
Fox's Jared Halpern. Well, this would be the first time Zelensky has left Ukraine since Russia invaded in February. And the House Ways and Means Committee is expected to soon post several years of former President Trump's tax returns, minus information such as Social Security numbers and bank account information. America's listening to Fox News.
It all started with the brutal murder of a young married couple. Now, more than 40 years after the couple was found, investigators and forensic genealogists are cracking the case wide open to uncover a stunning second mystery.
Where's the baby? I said, well, wait, he had a baby?
We cross the country speaking with victims' families and those close to the case as we ask, what about Holly?
I just want to know what happened.
Available on FoxNewsPodcasts.com and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Listen to the all-new Bret Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, talking to lawmakers weekly from opposite sides of the political spectrum about the issues of the day and how Americans can find common ground in a politicized world.
That's just not happening on Capitol Hill. It takes leadership, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Along with all your Bret Baier favorites like the campaign, the candidates, the all-star panel, and much more. Available now at FoxNewsPodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Evacuation orders remain in place in Boulder, Colorado, as crews work to contain a wildfire.
A structure fire prompted evacuations and road closures Monday in the Boulder foothills as high winds fueled the spread of the blaze that we're told has grown to about 16 acres, and that's 25% contained. This wildfire-weary evacuee, one of hundreds ordered to flee their homes.
Yeah, I moved up here, and I'm about 5 minutes away from where the fire started. And where I moved from was about 5 minutes from where that one started. So it's a bit of a fresh reminder.
The Boulder Office of Emergency Management says around 350 structures are threatened in the area as fire crews work for containment. The American Red Cross also on scene, opening a shelter for evacuees. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
A powerful 6.4 magnitude earthquake jolted Humboldt County, California early Tuesday, leaving at least 2 people dead, tens of thousands of people without power, and a widespread amount of damage. And there have been at least 80 aftershocks, and seismologists say there's a 13% chance a magnitude 5.0 or larger could hit over the next week. The Justice Department asked the Supreme Court to end the COVID immigration policy known as Title 42, but is asking the court to delay action until at least after Christmas. And a major airline may offer a nice perk in the new year.
Delta Airlines is looking to launch free wireless internet for its passengers as soon as early 2023, according to the Wall Street Journal. Initially, the carrier is expected to offer free Wi-Fi on a significant amount of its planes before turning on the service on more of its fleet throughout the year. Delta is not commenting on its plans, but did say it's in the process of testing Wi-Fi infrastructure with various offerings to select customers on select routes. Hillary Barsky, Fox News.
And I'm Carmen Roberts, and this is Fox News.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with the Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Another great halftime show wrapped up by a trip to Tall Tales Rogues Gallery. And as is our usual custom, Jose is now going to tell you how you too can have your picture on Rogues Gallery. Go ahead, Jose.
For those watching the live stream, the links are in the comments section. That'll take you directly to the purveyor. However, those listening to the radio or otherwise can point their browser to www.thepoint.gu. That's the Point's official webpage. Look for the link behind the T-shirt and the beard, and it'll take you to the purveyor. And then you order your shirt, take a selfie with the shirt when it arrives, send that selfie to the Point's WhatsApp phone number at 671-797-8255, and you will be added to the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, and what could be more... what could be more satisfying than to be able to see your own picture during the halftime show on Tall Tales every day of the week?
And I hear it gets you that most sought-after stool at the bar wearing your shirt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bragging rights? Yep. Oh, You bet. Yeah, so buy those shirts, wear them. Wear your tailgater shirt on Friday for sure. Wear your tailgater shirt on Saturday. Help to spread the good word about what a great show Tall Tales is. Okay, next on the card, I've got Rory versus the Open Government Law. And this is a story that ran in today's Post. The headline is Klitzkie, Port actions void since discussions were not on agenda. Let me give you some background on what's going on here. Rory, whose middle initial is S, and I think the S stands for settlement. Rory Settlement Respicio.
Not Sumi?
Yeah, or it could be Sumi, yeah. Way back, the first meeting with the board at the port after he was sworn in as director, he made some noise like he wanted to settle the cases of the Port 7, which is exactly what he finally did, settle those cases, paying out hundreds of thousands of dollars for cases that were in various stages of contests at the Civil Service Commission, Superior Court, Supreme Court, whatever. And he even brought Warren Wolf on board, if you saw the movie Pulp Fiction, to be the guy who went out and cleaned up all this stuff for him. At that same meeting, if you remember the YTK case where a Superior Court judgment said that the port owed YTK, a company called YTK, $15 million because of an arbitration award. The matter was on appeal to the Supreme Court, but Rory told the board that, it'd be a good idea to settle this, and he wanted to talk with Champ Calvo about a possible settlement. And one of the board members, I don't think any of them were really enamored with that idea. And Rory said, well, somebody said, who gave you authority to do that, Rory? Rory said, I haven't really done anything. I just talked with Champ to see if maybe that could happen. Well, it turned out later emails disclosed that they had already agreed on the when and where of the meeting. And a board member whose term expired told Rory, you should resign. He was so angry about it. But the Port 7 cases got settled, etc. Without going into what the Port 7 was all about. So then the next thing that happens is one of the port police officers named Frank Coe San Nicolas, who I'm going to refer to as Coe from now on because it's shorter, was arrested and put in the pokey on a rape charge. Well, when this happened, the conditions of Coe's release were that he was on house arrest and not to carry firearms. So Rory went through the usual procedure, the notice of proposed adverse action, the adverse action, and he fired Coe, Frank San Nicolas, because Frank didn't come to work, and if he had come to work, he couldn't carry a gun. Going to be a cop and not carry a gun? No.
Moved to England.
Yeah. So Rory fired him for that. Well, Coe had actually had 2 rape charges pending against him, and he spent 2 years, I understand, on home confinement as those cases unwound. He was found not guilty in both those cases, and it was pretty sleazy. In my opinion, it was pretty sleazy. So sleazy that I wrote a column for Pacific Island Times called Crime Doesn't Pay, But Sleaze Does. Because Coe walked away with, I think it was $166,000 worth of back pay.
Settlement.
Yeah, in the settlement. And there was an award of $40,000 for attorney's fees. Now, every time I mention this, I have to make it clear that it was $40,000 even. 40,000 decimal point 00. It wasn't $39,932 or $40,560. It was $40,000 even, which to me is very suspicious. You know, I can't imagine a lawyer doing a case and coming out and keeping time notes and coming out with that.
And I doubt he rounded down.
No, I don't think he would have rounded down. So, so I was really curious about that. So I sent a sunshine demand to Rory saying, provide me with public records that show that you owe the Areola firm $40,000. Well, I get the response back, and it's a copy of a check for $40,000 paid to Areola Law Firm. So I put Rory on notice. You violated the Sunshine Law. You didn't send what I asked for. I asked you for something that showed that the money was owed, and you sent me your recipe, your favorite recipe for oatmeal cookies. Well, you sent something, sure, but it wasn't what I asked for. To me, that's a violation of the open government law. So, next chapter is that at the next meeting of the board, in the middle of discussion, there was an item, and the chairman entertained questions on the matter before the board by saying, any questions? And after she said, any questions, Judy Guthert said, questions about anything? And the chairman said, yeah, we only meet once a month, so go ahead. So Judy Guthert said, well, what about the FOIA requests that we've been getting? And Rory said, yeah, I'm just going to paraphrase. Yeah, Klitzkie's been sending a lot of FOIA requests. Well, over the years, yeah, I've maybe sent 6 or 7, right?
How dare you?
But the one the last one I sent, it's been a long time in between. It's not like I'm sending them out every day, right? And Royce, yeah, he is, and he said something like, we all know Klitzkie. We all know what he's like. That sort of thing, just gratuitously. And then he says, and I always give him what he asked for. If I can, I always give him what he asked for. But the law makes it clear that I'm not supposed to, and I don't have to create a document that doesn't exist to satisfy a sunshine. So he made it very clear on the record during that meeting that he has no record showing how that they owed Ariel any money at all.
At a minimal, an invoice.
And exactly, I gave an example, such as an invoice. And he was righteous when he came back and said, we don't have that, and I don't have to create it just to make Klitzkie happy. That was kind of the thrust of what he said. So then Ms. Conchita Titano chimes in. She says, is there anything, I'm again paraphrasing, is there something we can do about this? If it keeps happening all the time, can we get some relief if it's harassment? So I don't know. I suspect they spent between 5 and 10 minutes. I suppose I should be flattered talking about me, right?
It almost sounds like we had an ear or a fly on the wall to a conspiratorial type of committee right now. You ever watch the show Scooby-Doo and the Mystery Gang?
Never have.
Well, they've solved these mysteries. There's always a bad guy dressed up in some costume or whatever. And there's a famous line that the bad guy always says, no matter what the bad guy is, if it wasn't for these meddling kids, I would have got away with it. You became a meddling kid.
I guess so,
even though you're following the law.
I guess so. Well, I'll bring my letter tomorrow, and I'll read some of the pertinent parts of the letter. So I went into, and then Rory again very righteously says, I've told Klitzkie more than once, if he doesn't, and then he said, he doesn't get to tell me that I violated the law. He said, if he thinks I violated the law, he should go to court and have the court tell me. And I've told him before, if he doesn't like the way I'm doing it, take me to court, Mr. Tough Guy Rory. Yeah, you don't like it, take me to court. And, of course, that's really tough talk from Rory when he's defended by a government counsel at no cost to him whatsoever. And I can tell you from personal experience, if you want to do that, you're going to have to pony up a advance payment for counsel. And I wound up ponying up more than $10,000 when I sued Michael Bora on a sunshine law violation, and it took a year to get it to resolve it.
No, you should rephrase. It's not that it's not on his dime. He's going to do it on our dime.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And when it's all over, of course, I got my attorney's fees. Michael Bora wound up paying $1,000 fine, and the court costs came out of the budget for the Department of Land Management. But by that time, the issue that I was interested in was stale. It had already been resolved. So, Mr. Tough Guy, I told him, if you don't like it, you don't get to tell me that I violated. If you don't like it, take me to court, he said. Now, there was a footnote in my letter. In fact, the footnote was longer than the letter. And in the total scheme of things, may be more important than the letter. And this story goes to that footnote, and it goes like this. The decisions and actions ratified in a November 30 meeting of the Port Authority Board of Directors are being called into question by a former lawmaker who is asserting discussion about his demands for public information amount to a violation of law that voids any approvals made during the meeting. This is today's Post. Bob Klitzkie, a former senator and judge who now hosts a weekday radio talk show, shared with the Daily Post his legal analysis sent to Port General Manager Rory Respicio. At issue is a relatively new law that June of the year before, last year, almost, a year and a half. A relatively new law that requires all agencies, boards, and commissions to publicize adequately the topics to be brought up during government meetings. Quote, notices must contain the agenda of matters to be discussed at the respective meeting. Agenda items must be in sufficient detail to put the public on notice as to what is to be discussed, the law mandates, as cited by Klitzkie in his email to Respicio. According to Klitzkie, the law was not followed by the Ports Board, which discussed at length the talk show host's repeated dealings with Respicio over demands for public documents, including guidance given on the matter by legal counsel, and whether the back-and-forth responses amounted to harassment, according to PAG board member Conchita Titano. The agenda is devoid of any mention of the Freedom of Information Act, the Sunshine Act, cease and desist orders, etc., Klitzkie, etc. Yeah, Rory said he was going to ask counsel to send me a letter to cease and desist. Now, that sounds pretty high power. Boy, when I read that, I'm going to have to cease and I wonder if I'll have to wear an ankle monitor. Yeah.
A bell around your collar.
Something like that, yeah. Because of this omission, Klitzkie is now asserting all official actions approved or disapproved during that meeting are nullified, citing another provision in the recently enacted law that provides any action of a public agency taken at a meeting is void and of no effect if the public agency failed to comply with a public notice of agenda matters to be discussed or fail to comply with a broadcasting requirement. So that's what the law says. You don't do it right, doesn't matter what you decided, it's void.
Ask the Guam Licensing Board Commission Board.
Yeah, Commission Board. When reached for comment, Respicio disputed the former lawmaker's legal conclusion. It's, quote, it's unbelievable that Klitzkie would make this suggestion, given that he's a lawyer. Yeah, but I didn't go to Stanford. He's a lawyer, and how I'm able to see that his argument flatlines as soon as he makes it, because I'm not a lawyer. So Klitzkie, the lawyer, makes an argument. Respicio, not a lawyer, but my argument's so bad that even though he's not a lawyer, he knows it's wrong.
By his way that he made the statement, it's wrong.
Exactly.
You know who would say that statement? Not a lawyer.
Now, given this particular penchant, for substituting your own legal judgment for those who have had the benefit of law school and whatever, I got a feeling that I'll be doing this a lot more often. He's not a lawyer, but by God, he knows that my lawyer flatlined as soon as it left my mouth. The general manager, Rory goes on to say, his allegations are baseless, as we have complied and disclosed all documents requested in our possession. Once again, he confesses, and in accordance with the Sunshine Act and that I continue to be guided by the Ports Council, who perhaps went to Stanford. So I'm talking, my letter talks about the open government law, and he comes back and talks about the Sunshine Law. So when he read my statement about the open government law, he knew I was wrong because it didn't mention the Sunshine Law at all. But Senator Joanne Brown, a former port general manager, and the author of the law invoked by Klitzkie, confirms the statute was enacted so residents would not be surprised by any discussions that lead to official actions by government agencies. The obvious intention is to make sure the general public is informed, she told the Post, clarifying that she did not attend or watch the November 30 board meeting. Other agencies, however, have had to redo votes since the law was enacted when faced with either challenges or legal advice that their meetings were not properly noticed. Agendas that did not detail what topics are included in old business or new business. Portions of meetings have been reasons an agency was considered to be non-compliant with the law. If there was a significant matter that required discussion, you would think that it would be included in the agenda. According to the Republican lawmaker, during the course of meetings, she has seen unexpected items or items not included on the agenda have been handled properly by other GovGuam entities. Sometimes it's brought up briefly and they are table it for the next meeting. I remember when somebody came to the Guam Board of Medical Examiners and wanted to make a complaint about a doctor, the chairman said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't discuss that. It's not on the agenda. We'll put it on the agenda next time, but we can't discuss it today." Things come up between when an agency goes out. Things come up between when an agenda goes out. But at the end of the day, if it was a matter for the board to discuss, Respicio should have included it on the agenda. Brown said she's hoping more agencies become aware of the provisions of the law to prevent actions from being voided. So tomorrow I'm going to bring the letter and we'll kind of go through it again. I won't tell you I won't do a preview of coming attractions, but I ain't done. All right, so that's the new stuff on today's card. Now I'm going to finally go into some of the stuff that's been hanging around for a while and I never got to, but I want to go to Wrigley Field first.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pika's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tenactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
downtown Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark, the near north side. Seventh inning stretch. We only got 2 more innings of Tall Tales to go today. Next item on the card is Virginia Tech versus the First Amendment. And the title, this ran, and this is a Jonathan Turley column, so you know it's good. And Jonathan titled it, Federal Court Rules in Favor of Former Virginia Tech Soccer Player in Free Speech Case. Now, I'm just wondering if this mention of free speech here is going to foreshadow the remarks that board member Guthertz and Titano make at the next board meeting if Rory puts this on the agenda. You mean we don't have free speech when we're in a board meeting? What about the First Amendment? I'm going to say what I want to say, and if anybody doesn't like it, what should I do, Rory? Well, I told Klitzkie he should take me to court. I think that would work, yeah. Well, we're board members. We have to have free speech here. We have to be able to talk whatever we want. Anyhow, the Virginia Tech case. Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Virginia. I have kind of a soft spot in my heart for it because my cousin went to Blacksburg to Virginia Tech. Got a really nice education there, wound up still working for Boeing. He's darn near as old as I am, and he's still working for Boeing.
That went to school in that area, too, in Radford, though, just south of Blacksburg, the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Nice country, beautiful country. Okay, so here it goes. We previously discussed the case of Henning versus Adair, in which a former Virginia Tech women's soccer player sued over the alleged retaliation her former coach, Charles Sugar Adair, for her refusal to kneel while a unity statement was read over the loudspeakers. A unity statement, yeah. In an important ruling, Judge Thomas Cullen correctly held that the case should go forward to trial. The lawsuit alleges that when Henning refused to kneel and support Black Lives Matter, she was benched, harassed, and ultimately forced off the team. Is that all they did to her? She didn't support Black Lives Matter, and she got off that easy? Wow. If the allegations are true, she could have not only a winning case, but a case that could set important precedent. There's that word, precedent. For the freedom of speech. Adair is being sued in both his individual and official capacity. So remember, I've explained you can't sue a state in a civil rights case. You can sue state officials, and it has kind of the same effect. If a civil rights suit is against a state official, the plaintiff wins and is awarded money damages, the state pays. In this case, Sugar is being sued in his individual capacity. So it's very possible that some money could come out of his own pocket. Adair implemented changes after a mandated diversity training order from the Atlantic Coast Conference. We have seen such mandated training programs in colleges and corporations, programs that can concerns over compelled speech and viewpoint discrimination. Mandated diversity training. You know where that's going to go, right? As a state school, Virginia Tech is subject to the limitations imposed on the government under the First Amendment. Henning alleges that Adair wanted the student to emulate former NFL player Colin Kaepernick in kneeling before games, and wanted to replace the name Hokies on the back of the jerseys with the names of people killed by police. I'll bet you he got an A in that diversity training course that his conference made him take.
You would think they'd keep Hokie on there. Rumor has it that it's a castrated turkey.
A hokey.
Rumor.
Yeah, it sounds right, yeah. Well, you know, if something is hokey, it means it's not genuine. Yeah, some hokey First Amendment suit, right? So he wanted him to kneel, and instead of having the school's nickname on the back of the jerseys, he wanted the names of people killed by police on the back of the jersey. And of course, you probably have to have several versions that said George Floyd. Yeah. During meetings, Henning objected to the changes as compelled speech and said she disagreed with aspects of the BLM movement. Whoa! Wow.
I'm surprised she wasn't tarred and feathered.
I'm run out of town on a rail, boiled in oil, the rack.
How dare you?
Yeah. She was then allegedly labeled a racist by some on the team. Well, you know, if you don't support black, what other conclusion can there be? And if you're not going to kneel when the Star Spangled Banner is played, can there be any possible? Yeah, I guess things have changed since my cousin went to Virginia Tech, because they obviously aren't teaching the really important things down there anymore. The complaint states that only 2 students objected to kneeling, but the other student was on scholarship, and her parents called Adair to warn him not to harass their daughter for her political views. Instead, Henning alleges Adair singled her out as well as speaking negatively about some people who believe all lives matter. You can't say that. No. She said that her refusal to kneel led to her benching and eventual removal from the team. It also allegedly resulted in a torrent of abuse verbally and on social media. What do these guys expect, man? You know, you go to Israel and you start sounding anti-Semitic. What do you think is going to happen to you? The complaint alleges that during the halftime in a game with Virginia, Adair singled out Henning and ridiculed and denounced her in front of the team as being selfish and bitching and moaning rather than being a team player and supporting the diversity displays. She's not a team player.
I guess the game of soccer was benched.
Yeah. She was pulled as a starter in the next game against Clemson, and again, Adair allegedly berated her publicly. This girl's a slow learner. She was also left off the starters in the next game against North Carolina. She claims that the abuse and shunning became so great that she was forced to resign. It's made her life miserable. I previously said that Henning would likely prevail, and Judge Cullen just cleared the way to trial. Quote, "It's well established that the First Amendment's protection of freedom of speech includes both the right to speak freely and the right to refrain from speaking at all." Now, a little bit of Law and Order music here, Jose. The First Amendment, I'll read it again. Very short and easy to remember. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or of abridging the freedom of speech or the press, etc. Now, the word speech, we all know what speech means. Right now, I'm speaking. That's speech. But over the years, the courts have determined that it also goes far enough to reach what's called symbolic speech. So not a sound is uttered. A state called Tinker versus Des Moines decided in the 1960s during the Vietnam War, some students wore black armbands to school in Des Moines, and they were protesting the Vietnam War. And I think they were at least suspended or disciplined for wearing those, because there was a rule that said you can't do that, or they were told not to do it, or whatever. And the Supreme Court said, this is symbolic speech. And the First Amendment doesn't stop at the gateway to the schoolhouse. So the kids won. And that school district had to pony up some money. So that's symbolic speech. When Colin Kaepernick is out taking a knee, that is symbolic speech. Burning the American flag, symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. So that's what we're talking about as far as speech is concerned. So the First Amendment protection of freedom of speech includes both the right to speak freely and the right to refrain from speaking at all, meaning the right to not have to participate in anybody's idea of symbolic speech. As a necessary corollary to protect that fundamental right, the right of free speech includes the right to be free from retaliation by a public official for the exercise of that right. Believe it or not, a soccer coach is a public official. To establish a claim for First Amendment retaliation, Henning must put forth sufficient evidence that 1, she engaged in protected First Amendment activity, 2, Adair took some action that adversely affected her First Amendment rights, and 3, there was a causal relationship between her protected activity and Adair's actions. The court concludes that there is sufficient evidence in the record supporting Henning's claim that Adair's actions, whatever his motives, adversely affected her First Amendment rights. In making this determination, the court applies an objective standard, asking whether the defendant's allegedly retaliatory conduct would likely deter a person of ordinary firmness from the exercise of First Amendment rights. Good test. In so doing, the court considered how the alleged retaliation personally affected the plaintiff. But while plaintiff's actual response to the retaliatory conduct provides some evidence of the tendency of that conduct to chill First Amendment activity, it is not dispositive. Moreover, not all retaliatory conduct tends to chill First Amendment activity, and a plaintiff seeking to recover from retaliation must show that the defendant's conduct resulted in something more than a de minimis inconvenience to her exercise of First Amendment rights. Now, no doubt this came before the court on Chugger's motion to dismiss, and this is from the decision denying the motion to dismiss. Little vocabulary lesson here in Law and Order, Jose. De minimis, D-E, new word, M-I-N-I-M-I-S, a word that lawyers use very frequently. If something is de minimis, it means, yeah, it's there, but it's so small that a case can't turn on it or liability doesn't arise from it. De minimis, a good word or a good phrase. Okay, going on. A reasonable jury could conclude that Adair's conduct towards his former player constituted an adverse action for purposes of her First Amendment retaliation claim. Adair contends that his halftime criticism and comments at the later film review session were justified based on Henning's poor play and were unrelated to her pre-game refusal to kneel. But as Henning points out, this argument misses the mark because it's impermissibly assumed that Adair's version of the facts, specifically that his criticism was motivated by Henning's purported on-field struggles rather than her pregame actions, is true. At the summary judgment stage, the court can't, it's summary judgment, not dismissal, cannot make this credibility determination in Adair's favor. Its determination is solely within the province of the jury. So he moved for summary judgment. The judge said no summary judgment because there are factual disputes here. There's not a clear factual record. Summary judgment denied. We're going to take this matter to trial. Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs.
Santa's coming and things are looking up. Bank Pacific has rolled out Rudolph's favorite My Christmas loan with an annual percentage interest rate as low as 5.99% and up to $50,000. And with the Bank Pacific contactless Visa debit card, you can have the flexibility of using your money when you want to, where you want to. My Christmas loan, contactless Visa debit card. Let's make Christmas merrier. Member FDIC, equal opportunity lender. Credit conditions apply. Merry Christmas from Bank Pacific.
All three stations, all three morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top three best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top three radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizama. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing the point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
So we've got our viewer from Mandan, North Dakota again today. What's his name, Jose? Raymond McGravy, yeah. Mandan, North Dakota. Bismarck is the capital. Mandan is across the river from Bismarck, if you've ever been to North Dakota. Okay, let's go back here to Chugger. Virginia Tech versus First Amendment. So the last... where I left off was at the summary judgment, the court cannot make a credibility determination in Adair's favor. Its determination is solely within the province of the jury. Going on with Turley's article, moreover, Adair's argument conflates adverse action with causation. Whatever his motivations, the court has no trouble concluding that Adair's conduct towards Henning, publicly chastising her, removing her from the starting lineup, and reducing her playing time would tend to chill a person of ordinary firmness's exercise of her First Amendment right. Although, and then Turley goes on to explain, although Henning was not on an athletic scholarship, and there's no evidence she had higher aspirations in her chosen sport, the type of retaliatory conduct alleged here would certainly have a chilling effect on college athletes generally, especially those who rely on scholarships to offset or cover their academic expenses, or those that recognize playing time and visibility will affect their future prospects in the sport or otherwise. For example, a line on one's resume that reads 4-year state Division I soccer player is preferable to member of Division I soccer team. So Turley said, yeah, this kind of stuff's going to have a chilling effect on soccer players. But to prevail on her retaliation claim, Henning must establish the requisite causal connection between her refusal to take a knee, that is her protected First Amendment activity, and Adair's alleged adverse actions against her. This is a high hurdle, and it's not enough to show that an official acted with a retaliatory motive and that the plaintiff was injured. The motive must cause the injury. The alleged retaliatory move must be a but-for cause, a term that lawyers use all the time. But for Mrs. O'Leary's kicking over the lantern in the barn, there would not have been a Chicago fire. Example. Meaning that the plaintiff must prove the defendant would not have taken the adverse action against her absent his retaliatory motive. Genuine issues of material fact preclude the court from granting summary judgment on this score. As a threshold matter, Adair claims that there's no evidence that he was even aware that Henning stood during the unity statement when he harshly criticized her at halftime. But this is belied by the record. Still photographs from the game clearly depict Adair, who is kneeling on the sideline looking in Henning's direction as she remains standing. But a fair review of the record indicates that Henning's case is based on more than supposition. Indeed, ample circumstantial evidence undergirds her claim and gives rise to genuine issues of material fact about Adair's true motives and actions. The close temporal proximity between the pregame incident and Adair's halftime tirade against his starting defender suggests some causal connection between these events, and the close temporal proximity between the other alleged adverse actions occurred within 2 weeks of Henning's refusal to kneel before the UVA game. Henning also points to evidence showing that in the late summer of 2020, the Virginia Tech's women's soccer team, like many organizations and groups, was divided over whether and how to publicly support various social justice initiatives, including BLM, in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. Indeed, an apparent rift had developed over this issue between a large group of team members, mainly freshmen, who openly embraced BLM, and a few upperclassmen who did not, causing the freshmen to complain directly to Adair what they perceived as racism. If you don't support George, if you don't worship George Floyd, if you don't support everything that BLM stands for, obviously you're a racist. Adair later addressed his apparent rift over BLM in at least 2 team meetings during the preseason. Prior to one, he texted his staff that some discussion regarding Black Lives Matter and racial injustice had already occurred, and some members of the team were open and speaking, which is great, but that some others made side comments later on that struck a nerve with other people. Where's Greta?
How dare you?
In off-the-record comments to ACC network broadcasters prior to the season, which were overheard by a Virginia Tech sports information official, Adair lamented this divide and his team's lack of consensus on how to support social justice initiatives. All of this suggests that this apparent BLM social justice divide was far more significant to Adair at the time than he would have the court believe today. So, it just stands to reason, Jose, if you want to play soccer, if you want to play big-time soccer, you got to be on the right side of social justice issues. If you're not, you got to even ask yourself why you're in university.
That's the new information on the stats of your card.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not how many goals you score.
No, what position you play.
No, that doesn't matter. Yeah, Henning, that's as important as your pronouns. Henning suggested the side of this issue that Adair considered open and great was the pro-BLM side, and the small group making side comments later on that struck a nerve was the anti-BLM condition with which she aligned. Although no direct evidence supports this association, there's circumstantial evidence from which a reasonable jury could infer it. At a team meeting the following day, Adair encouraged his players to reach a consensus on how to support for social justice, at one point suggesting they wear special warm-up jerseys. Immediately after that team meeting, Adair allegedly made snide remarks about the family of one of his players' preference for all lives matter as opposed to Black Lives Matter. They're going to get him on snide remarks. The student manager who overheard Adair make these statements, the other coaches immediately reported to a small group of players who were opposed to supporting Black Lives Matter publicly. And it was no secret among the players and coaching staff that Henning was an outspoken conservative and supporter of former President Donald Trump. Oh, my goodness.
Now the real crime's exposed.
Yeah, we thought it was bad up until here.
I was on her side until now.
Yeah, wow. Macaulay Soto, the director of operations for women's soccer team and a BLM supporter, recalled that Henning was the only one who consistently posted a lot of conservative things on her social media. The evidence of Adair's apparent views on this issue is reflected in his alleged criticism of all Lives Matter supporters and Henning's well-known conservative leanings and lack of support for BLM further support an inference that Adair had a retaliatory motive when he criticized and later benched Henning for refusing to kneel during the unity statement. So there's more to this article, but I think you get the point. You got a football coach here who really likes the Black Lives Matter thing, and you've got a player who's apparently a starter, a good player, who has her own ideas. And she is not going to engage in symbolic speech just because the coach wants her to do it. And the coach says, I'll show you, I'll bench you. And then by his conversation, and if you've ever played sports, you know that a coach ordinarily has a lot of influence over his players. Well, we can pick this up tomorrow, but it's time now for me to say adios to our president. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Trump tax returns about to go public. I'm Carmen Roberts, Fox News. After years of fighting to keep his tax returns from Congress and the American public, a House committee votes to release 6 years of former President Trump's returns. Congress obtained them after Trump lost an appeal to the Supreme Court. Ranking committee member Republican Kevin Brady says the release sets a bad precedent.
And overturns decades of privacy protections for average Americans that have existed since the Watergate reforms.
For the past 50 years, though, most presidents have chosen to voluntarily release their returns. The New York Times reports the returns show Trump paid 0 taxes in 2020. American taxpayers will foot the bill for a massive $1.7 trillion spending bill Congress is considering this week. It will avoid a government shutdown Friday and keep the government funded through September. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell.
Admittedly, I'm pretty proud of the fact that with a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate, we were able to achieve, through this omnibus spending bill, essentially all of our priorities.
If you're heading out for the holidays, you might want to leave earlier. A dangerous winter storm is disrupting travel.
The storm really coming at a bad time for the nearly 113 million people expected to be traveling for the holidays. And the storm is really just getting started. By tomorrow, the snow is expected to reach the Midwest before turning into more of a rain and wind event here in the east. And the combination of bitter cold temperatures and dangerous wind is life-threatening and already impacting most of the country.
Fox Weather's Katie Byrne. The tracking service FlightAware shows airlines delayed more than 5,600 flights Tuesday and canceled nearly 490. America's listening to Fox News.
It all started with the brutal murder of a young married couple. Now, more than 40 years after the couple was found, investigators and forensic genealogists are cracking the case wide open to uncover a stunning second mystery.
Where's the baby? I said, well, wait, he had a baby?
We crossed the country speaking with victims' families and those